A doctor suddenly lost his position. A crucial file vanished, and a full medical evaluation was reduced down to only two cold, simple words: pneumonia. But what actually happened behind those closed doors? What did that physician truly discover inside Diane Keaton's body? And why did he say, "This truth will haunt the world forever"? Before we begin this journey to explore the final mystery surrounding Diane Keaton's story, prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear may leave a chill running down your spine. In the lower levels of Cedars-Sinai Hospital, the morgue sat in complete stillness, illuminated only by the harsh fluorescent light reflecting off a stainless steel table, and on that table, a body rested beneath a white sheet. No one realized that within moments, that silence would shatter, along with a mystery the world was never prepared to face. Comment 1 if you feel compassion for Diane Keaton, or 0 if you see it differently. And if you're ready to step into this story, hit like and subscribe, because we're about to uncover every chilling detail hidden beneath that sheet. Actress Diane Keaton passed away in California at the age of 79. Her family released a statement, but they offered no explanation about what led to her passing. According to the doctor who reportedly examined her body last, it wasn't just pneumonia. He claimed there were internal reactions taking place inside her system that he had never witnessed throughout 3 decades of medical work. A chain of unusual biological responses unlike anything documented in standard medical archives was described in that file. Yet just hours after the report was completed, it was locked away. From that moment forward, Diane Keaton's death shifted from an ordinary case into one of the most unsettling mysteries Cedars-Sinai has ever been tied to. Within pockets of the Los Angeles medical community, that night is still whispered about as a subject no one dares to bring up. A doctor suddenly lost his job. A file vanished, and an official report was quietly replaced with just 2 plain words: pneumonia. Los Angeles. Early morning. The 12th of October 2025. The entire city still half asleep beneath a thin veil of mist stretching across the western horizon. Streetlights flickered weakly against the damp pavement, glowing like the final breath of a night refusing to end. In the distance, the echo of sirens blended with the sharp whistle of wind weaving through the trees, forming a chilling, uneasy morning symphony. Far beneath Cedars-Sinai Hospital, where sunlight had never once reached, the morgue sat in absolute stillness, lit only by the pale, indifferent glow of fluorescent lights. Everything here was sterile, too perfect, almost unnaturally controlled. The sting of disinfectant mixed with the metallic residue of old surgical instruments. And in the center of the room, a stainless steel table caught that harsh, cold light. Just outside the door, the clock struck 12:48 a.m. The air inside the room felt heavy, almost frozen in place. Every bit of sound was swallowed by the silence, except for the slow, dry scratching of a pen moving across paper. The man seated at the desk, the chief forensic examiner on duty that night, had been staring without saying a word for several minutes. His eyes locked onto the blood test data and the lung tissue images glowing on the monitor. The dim blue screen carved deep shadows across his exhausted face. Technically, this autopsy was routine only to validate the official cause of death. The death certificate had already been issued less than 7 hours earlier. Primary bacterial pneumonia. No complications. A clean, uncomplicated conclusion that should have left 0 reason to question anything. But what drew the doctor's attention wasn't doubt. It was something else entirely. The problem was that the numbers in front of him didn't resemble any pneumonia case he had encountered in 3 decades of practice. The body on the table belonged to Diane Keaton, 79 years old, the legendary actress of Annie Hall and The Godfather, a true icon of American cinema for over 30 years. Reports suggested her health had been stable. She still took morning walks with her 2 dogs, shared photos on Instagram, and regularly called her daughter in New York. So the idea that pneumonia had suddenly taken her life seemed almost impossible. When the white sheet was slowly lifted, the morgue fell into a deeper, heavier silence. A faint silver mark appeared on her left shoulder about 7 centimeters long, flat, cold to the touch, almost wax-like. There were no bruises, no surgical cuts, no needle marks. Under the harsh overhead light, her skin took on a strange, almost metallic shimmer, as if coated with a thin layer of keratin. "Looks more like tissue regeneration than necrosis," a technician murmured, his words swallowed by the low hum of the ventilation. His colleague subtly raised a hand, signaling for silence. On closer inspection, tiny, scaly lesions were scattered across her neck and shoulder, the very areas where Diane had undergone surgery to remove squamous cell carcinoma back in the late 1980 seconds. Under the microscope, the skin tissue revealed an unusual inflammatory reaction. The cells weren't dead. They appeared to be malfunctioning, like a worn system suddenly rebooting. "Abnormal cell activation," the doctor scribbled in a preliminary note. But within an hour, that note vanished from the official record. When they examined her lungs, the tissue bore no resemblance to the typical patterns of bacterial pneumonia. The area between the two spots was strikingly unusual. Not bright red, not dull gray, but a pale, almost delicate pink. Under the blue light, some tissue patches seemed to emit a faint glow, hinting at the activity of endogenous enzymes, a phenomenon normally seen only in living cells. The young endoscopy doctor whispered as he watched, "It's like the body is still trying to repair itself." No one replied. In the forensic notes, only a hastily scribbled pencil line remained. The pattern of this reaction didn't match any bacterial spread. It could be an autoimmune response, a fleeting observation yet enough to make the entire team pause. According to reports from the Los Angeles Times, Diane Keaton's tissue samples were sealed that very night, October 12, and sent directly to Cedars-Sinai's pathology lab. But just as the preliminary analysis was about to be uploaded, the report vanished. The hospital's internal server went offline for a full 45 minutes. No one knew why or who had caused it. A night shift nurse, Marissa Lott, later told a local ABC affiliate, "We were ready to send the report, but the file was empty. Only the patient's name and the timestamp remained." The chief doctor stepped out of the room, paused briefly, and said, "Don't record that part in the file." He didn't meet anyone's gaze, simply said it and walked away. By the next morning, the entire pathology system had been locked down. The forensic team received an internal memo instructing them to suspend all data transmissions immediately. Two technicians were quietly reassigned to other departments, while the rest of the team were asked to sign strict confidentiality agreements. That might have been the end of the story if not for Deadline Hollywood, later revealing that the initial report noted something unusual. The body temperature hadn't followed the expected physiological decline. Normally, in older adults, body temperature drops rapidly within the first 2 hours after death. But in Diane Keaton's case, it remained at 33 degrees even 5 hours later, an extraordinarily rare occurrence. Forensic specialists call this a slow enzyme reaction, typically associated with autoimmune conditions or severe metabolic anomalies. Before anyone could verify the findings, all related data was immediately classified as a family secret. When reporters from People and Variety asked for details, Cedars-Sinai's spokesperson offered only a single line: "No cause of death other than pneumonia has been determined. We respect the family's privacy." Yet in Los Angeles, rumors spread faster than wildfire. A dermatologist who had previously treated Keaton suggested that an autoimmune reaction could have caused her own immune system to attack her lung. Another physician observed that the unusual texture on her shoulder resembled tissue exposed to ultraviolet light, hinting at possible long-term effects from the phototherapy Diane had undergone for years. A whispered detail from the doctors added yet another layer to the mystery. In 2024, Diane Keaton had taken part in a small UCLA study investigating immune system changes in patients with a history of skin cancer, a report that was never made public. From the depths of Cedars-Sinai's basement, hints of the story began to leak. By October 13, evening programs on CNN Entertainment, NBC News, and ABC7 reported that Diane Keaton had passed peacefully from pneumonia. There was no mention of the silver mark, the locked data, or the missing tissue sample. And just 3 days later, the chief forensic doctor who had conducted the autopsy quietly resigned. In his brief farewell, he said nothing more than a single sentence. A colleague later told Hollywood Reporter, "That body didn't belong to any pathology I've ever encountered." That very night, Diane Keaton's records vanished from the Cedars-Sinai system. No testimony, no explanation, only scattered notes, deleted messages, and hushed conversations drifting through the cafes of Beverly Grove, where young doctors still speculate whether what they witnessed that night was the body's final response or something else entirely. That question, like the silver mark on her shoulder, remains unresolved, lingering in the minds of all who were there. An unsolved mystery. Since that night, some in the medical field have quietly reopened Diane Keaton's health records not to challenge the death certificate, but to search for conditions never previously documented and clues that might have pushed her body to the very edge of medical understanding. This story stretches back over half a century to a Hollywood that had yet to learn the meaning of protection. In 1970, Diane Keaton was in her early 20s, a fresh-faced young actress just stepping off the Broadway stage. She had no idea that a routine checkup would mark the first dark milestone in her medical history. A doctor had noticed a small black spot on her right temple, almost like a dab of makeup, but the biopsy was unequivocal: basal cell carcinoma, a form of skin cancer. Back then, Hollywood knew nothing of sunscreen or safe exposure to the Sunday actors, spent long hours beneath glaring halogen lights, sweat and makeup melting together in the heat. Diane Keaton was no exception. One surgery on her shoulder, another on her cheek, leaving only faint scars. Small scars, but for an actress scrutinized under every lens, they became a constant concern. After the procedures, Diane grew wary of light itself. She covered her neck, wore gloves and wide-brimmed hats, even tilting them to shield her face. Family members recalled that throughout the 1,980 seconds, she rarely stepped outside at midday. A Beverly Hills dermatologist once noted that her skin reacted to sunlight almost like a newborn's just a few minutes outdoors could leave burns. The condition improved over time, but it never fully disappeared. In the years that followed, Keaton underwent multiple light therapy sessions, using ultraviolet rays to prevent recurrence. The treatments kept her skin smooth, but left her cells permanently sensitive to light. Half a century later, when her body arrived at Cedars-Sinai, the traces were still evident. On her left shoulder, doctors observed tissue with a keratinized structure, strikingly similar to the early-stage scaling lesions. Under the microscope, there were no bacteria, no signs of necrosis. The cells appeared to be reactivating, dividing in unusual patterns. In a draft endoscopy report, the physician scribbled a single line: "Cannot confirm malignancy, but cannot exclude it either." Vague as it may seem, anyone who read those words would immediately grasp the gravity of what they implied.